Today we're reacting to explosive commentary surrounding President Biden's mental fitness and the media's role in hiding it. From White House spin to gaslighting the American public, it's time we dissect what really happened and what this says about the media bias and political accountability. So, let's dive in.
That was obvious at the time. They thought it would be incredibly politically damaging, and it is. But it also reveals something, I think, very troubling to a lot of Americans.
Which is what? That we didn't know already. This is kind of my question. We knew this. We knew this, Abby. All of this has been coming out.
Well, we know this. I think there's a distinction between what we know right now and what we knew in December 2023, January 2020.
All right, so right off the bat, they admit this was publicly damaging. Yet, they downplay how deceptive the narrative was. It's not just that the public didn't know, it's that we weren't told the opposite. Biden's team and much of the media insisted he was sharp, fully capable. But the tapes paint a much different picture. And if this was known in early 2023, why didn't they push ahead with re-election talk?
Sure.
Did we know that the president, when asked a simple question, could not finish sentences, couldn't recall dates of critically important things that happened in his own life? I don't think that was clear. In fact, the White House was saying quite the opposite.
And I think that is something that Joe Biden paid for and the Democratic Party paid for. He lost the election. And everything that we've been hearing throughout, Jake Tapper's book and everything else that has come out, we clearly know that the White House staff was not honest with the American people. And those of us who were told something that wasn't true, we're dealing with that. And, a lot of us are not happy about it.
Here was the core issue. The White House wasn't just optimistic. They were dishonest. Biden's cognitive decline was becoming obvious, yet the administration kept feeding the public a fantasy. Voters went to the polls without the full truth. That's not just political, it's moral failure.
But the fact of the matter is, Abby, at this moment in time, the release of these tapes does what? Again, it doesn't. Is Joe Biden running for president? Is he president? Is he running for anything? No. So I think that while this is something that I know the American people, many people think the American people have a right to know this, and so they do, and this is something that the reckoning has been happening already. But look at the other headlines that have been happening today. And what are we facing today with Donald Trump?
Before we go on to the other headlines, which we will do, we have a lot of the show left, I do still want to focus on this because accountability is the thing that I think is missing here. I think there are a lot of people saying, well, we know it now, so, it's fine. But the truth is that there were people whose, I don't know what some of these spokespeople knew, but let's just play actually what some of these Biden officials were saying about the Hur report and about Robert Hur himself. Listen.
I saw the 30-second pink salt trick in a viral video. Weeks later, they stopped to call me delusional when they saw my 26-inch waist at work. Today, I'm here to teach you how to make the new Japanese.
You're left to.
Now they're framing this as old news. But that's the deflection tactic. The real scandal wasn't when the public found out. It's that the people who knew, staff, media allies, chose silence or spin. They're hoping Americans just shrug it off.
Wonder why this report spends time making gratuitous and inappropriate criticisms of the president.
What I saw of that report last night, I believe is, as a former prosecutor, the comments that were made by that prosecutor, gratuitous, inaccurate, and inappropriate. The way that the president's demeanor in that report was characterized could not be more wrong on the facts and clearly politically motivated.
As it relates to his age, as it relates to what has been said in this report, it is something that we don't believe lives in reality.
Just listen to these officials downplaying legitimate concerns by attacking the prosecutor. That's called misdirection. Instead of addressing and demanding findings, they questioned the motives. Classic political strategy. When you can't dissolve the facts, discredit the source.
There's a chronological timeline here that we're all missing, right? For the network that I used to work at down the street, talking about Biden's cognitive decline during 2020 when he was clearly lucid, that's wrong.
By the way, if y'all like this content, please subscribe and watch more videos.
But then when we move into 2023 and what we're dealing with now with all of this information coming out, I want to echo something that Alex said at the White House Correspondents' thing. This is what journalism is supposed to uncover. Like, I know that at that time, the party has to unify and with respect to messaging, go out there. They got to kill Robert Hur, figuratively, not literally, okay? I know 86-47. But so they have to do these certain things and all be unified on the message front. But now we have to own this. This stuff is coming out now. The election's over. It doesn't matter. Now's the time for the analysis part of this, of how future administrations don't hide the fact, including the one right now with a 7, 8-year-old man that potentially in a couple years, this could be happening to. Right. We can't kill them if they start, we can't kill them if they start covering up things like this. Like, I like that this information is coming out now. Obviously, we would have liked for it to come out earlier on, so it could have given the Democratic Party a true chance at somebody. But
I mean,
there's an order of it.
These clips were from February. I mean, if Democrats had taken seriously, which, by the way, in a way, Robert Hur kind of undersold this.
We hear the media covered it, but what they did was damage control. They highlighted stumbles only when they became too obvious to ignore. But as the speaker notes, this information should have changed the primary conversation. It didn't, because party unity came before public truth.
He kind of threw Joe Biden a lifeline. It was an opportunity, actually, for Democrats to take it seriously, maybe change gears at that point, and maybe given a potential nominee more time.
He gave him dignity in the answer as president, which might have been warranted, but you just showed a clip of 3 people gaslighting and lying directly to the American people. And I would count the number at 0. The number is 0 of people that heard the Hur tape and were surprised. And this is why there's so much distrust in media. Because you're right, maybe in 2020 it wasn't obvious. But 2022, 2023, right? Now everyone saw this person, first with the notes of who to ask questions, with the questions pre-handed out, pre-answered, right? Then there was the guy, he couldn't get up the stairs. And he couldn't get up a single flight of stairs without falling. He fell off his bike. He would struggle for every answer. We all saw that. And most of us were able.
This is where it gets disturbing. Biden admitted to knowingly keeping classified documents. The public was told it was accidental. Oops, in the garage. But privately, the excuse became, oh, he forgot. So they used his cognitive decline as a legal defense, while insisting publicly that he was mentally sharp. That's not just hypocrisy, it's manipulation.
To identify the fact that the White House and allies in media were lying night after night after night. And then suddenly the script flipped it, Joe Biden was cast aside, and suddenly now we could talk about that as though we all should have known it, or we all should sort, we all made mistakes that maybe we should apologize for. But it was clear as day to anybody.
There are a lot of damning vignettes in this audio if you go through it, but one I want to highlight very quickly is where President Biden admits that he held onto classified documents related to Afghanistan, and when he's asked about it, he says, oh, it was for posterity's sake. So he was admitting what the White House was telling us was just inadvertent, that all these documents were in boxes in his garage in Delaware inadvertently. Here's the president admitting that he knowingly kept the document, but then his attorney interjects, Bob Bauer, and he's like, no.
The attorneys had to stage manage him just to get through questions. If he couldn't answer basic legal queries without help, how is he supposed to run the country? This is about more than memory lapses. It's about who was really calling the shots behind the scenes.
Oh, no. He doesn't remember. We can't speculate. So in private, they were leaning into his forgetfulness. They were trying to use that to protect him from a criminal charge. Yet to the public, they were telling us, oh, he's sharp and he's lucid and he can recite the periodic table by memory.
Pete, you left out the most important part. We saw we heard his attorneys stage managing Joe Biden in some of those extended audio clips. You have a guy who couldn't talk to attorneys, who were essentially asking very simple questions, and he couldn't answer it without being stage managed and scripted and prodded by his own attorneys. He probably had to do that every day as president. That's why the American public, who was doing it for him?
I mean, there's some stage managing going on with Donald, various people influencing him in the chair. Well, of course.
Some media figures are trying to soften the blow. He's a good man. He passed great bills. That's fine. But it's irrelevant. The job is the presidency, not sympathy. When someone is unfit to serve, past accomplishments don't excuse the present risk.
You know, not comparable, but I did want to say on the media front, just on your point about how it was a media cover-up, I think I see that rhetoric a lot. I think the media covered it pretty ferociously as they could from the outside. I think they were constantly talking about his acuity. They would cover his stumbles. They would cover what happened, with the bicycle. And I really think for me, it's a sad human story of a person who I really have a lot of respect for, who I think did really good job in office. The infrastructure bill, the Chips and Science Act. Absolutely. I think it would just, if we had a 65-year-old Biden, maybe we'd be in a different country. We wouldn't have to deal with the avalanche of chaos we have currently. But what I would just say is that I think
accountability is the key word. And yes, Biden broke his one-term promise. But the real betrayal came from the Democratic Party and their media allies who silenced critics. Anyone who dared raise concerns was labeled disloyal or was just tossed aside altogether.
I think on the media side, I don't think it was necessarily a media failure because I think they covered it ferociously. I just think now, as we have this context in hindsight, the real key thing was he shouldn't have run for re-election.
He shouldn't have been president. He was not up to the task.
Can I just jump on that? Because you talked about accountability. And you're right, that is incredibly important. I think at the end of the day, the accountability falls with Joe Biden, and frankly, probably with Jill Biden too. Because
that's true. But it also falls on the Democratic Party that ostracized people who said anything about Joe Biden, including attacking the media for even raising the issue of his age when clearly it was an issue. I mean, there's accountability there too.
I completely agree. But at the end of the day, he's the one who promised that he was going to be a bridge, that he was going to be a one-term president, that he was not going to run for a second term, and then he didn't.
He was forced into that by George Clooney.
No,
I mean, let's be honest. He was the only one who had the courage to say something.
I want to play just one more part. This is the second day.
Even on a good day, Biden rambles off topic. This clip highlights how even when coherent, he's out of sync with reality. The White House knew this, and yet they were told opposite. That's why the erosion of trust is so deep.
It was a multi-day interview, and one of the reasons that Axios released, I guess, snippets of both days is because you can see a clear difference between day one, when the president was very tired, it seemed, and almost incoherent, and day two, which sounded like this.
A lot has changed in terms of everything from the internet to the way in which we communicate with one another, to that has fundamentally altered the ability. I've had this discussion with the press.
Mr. President, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, I'm sorry. Anyway, that's what I wanted to do.
I
It had
really,
nothing to do with Afghanistan.
okay, that answered my question.
And in a way, I mean, yes, he is speaking more clearly. He's finishing his sentences. He's speaking more quickly, but he's also rambling about something that he's not asked about. And so all of that, even the good day, seems to raise questions about what was going on with President Biden at that time.
You know, the one thing I just want to piggyback on what Ahmed said in terms of the journalists covering this. We did something recently on Can We Please Talk where we...
This final segment drives it home. The press was asking soft questions, focusing on voter concerns instead of the actual evidence of a cover-up. That's not journalism. That's public relations for the White House. And now they all act surprised? No, we saw it coming.
We went back just to listen to some of the White House press briefings, and I was telling you this, Abby, off air, about from KJP back in, over the last year, whatever it was. And a lot of the questions from the press focused around voter concerns about the age, not about what Jake and Alex are alleging, or some of the stuff had been proven in the book, which is about the actual cover-up of the administration and people like the lawyer that we just saw before going out there and saying he's fine, or Kamala Harris going out there and saying, as a prosecutor, I did this, that, and the third. Like, those type of things were not the questions that we were asking as media. Like, we should have been a lot more intrusive because all of this is now coming out now. And like you said, who does this help now? He's not running for anything. We all knew, like you said, Joe, we all knew he was an older man. But we knew it was being asked from the voter perspective, not from can he handle the next 4 years actually as president. He forgot Mitterrand died at like 92, and he thought he was still in France. Like, those were things that were just not being, in my opinion, super harped on with respect to the media.
The truth didn't change, only the timing of its exposure. The media and political elites had been honest from the start. The country could have made informed decisions, but instead, spin took priority. If you value accountability and real journalism, please subscribe for more reactions that cut through the noise. And I'll see you on the next one.